The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from dozens of species gathered for an emergency session. Ambassador Zektar of the Vorthani Empire adjusted his ceremonial robes, his four eyes scanning the crowd with barely concealed satisfaction. Today would mark a turning point in galactic history. Fellow beings, Zektar's voice boomed through the vast chamber, enhanced by translation matrices that converted his words into hundreds of languages simultaneously. We gather today to address the growing threat posed by the species known as humans. A ripple of unease swept through the assembled delegates. The humans had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago, but their rapid expansion and technological advancement had caught everyone's attention. Some viewed them with curiosity, others with concern, but Zektar saw them as an obstacle to Vorthani dominance. Representative Thys of the peaceful Zalari species raised a webbed hand. Ambassador Zektar, the humans have been exemplary members of our community. They've honored all treaties and contributed significantly to our collective knowledge. Zektar's mandibles clicked in annoyance. Exemplary? They refuse to submit to proper galactic hierarchy. They question our established order. Their military grows stronger each day, and they show no signs of accepting their place as a junior species. From the human delegation section, Ambassador Sarah Chen stood slowly. Her species was still considered young by galactic standards, barely past their first century of space travel, but there was something in her posture that commanded respect. Even from those who doubted humanity's place among the stars. Honorable delegates, Sarah began, her voice calm but carrying an undertone that made several species shift uncomfortably. Humanity has always sought peaceful coexistence. We've shared our medical advances freely. Our food production techniques have helped feed billions across the galaxy, and our defensive technologies have been made available to all members of this council. Zektar's laugh was harsh and grating. Defensive technologies? Your species has weaponized everything from farming equipment to children's toys. We've seen your historical records. Your people have been at war with each other for millennia. The chamber fell silent. It was true that humanity's violent past was well documented, but many species had similar histories. What made humans different was how they'd learned from those conflicts. Yes, Sarah replied simply. We have fought. We have learned. We have grown. And we have chosen peace whenever possible. Peace, Zektar spat. You speak of peace while your ships patrol the outer rim, while your colonies expand into unclaimed space, while your influence grows daily. You are a threat to the natural order. Elder Morden of the ancient Kethari species, whose civilization had guided galactic politics for over 1,000 years, finally spoke. His voice was like wind through crystal caves, ancient and weighted with wisdom. There is an old rule in this galaxy, Morden said, and every being in the chamber leaned forward to listen. A rule as old as spaceflight itself. Never enrage the humans. Confused murmurs filled the air. The Kethari were known for their prophetic abilities, their understanding of patterns that stretched across centuries. But this was the first time anyone had heard this particular warning. Zektar's mandibles spread in what passed for a grin among his species. Superstition from a dying race. The Kethari cling to old fears while the galaxy moves forward. You misunderstand, Morden continued, his ancient eyes fixed on the Vorthani ambassador. This is not superstition. It is observation. It is wisdom earned through millennia of watching species rise and fall. The humans are not like other species. They do not simply fight. They do not simply conquer. When truly threatened, when pushed beyond their considerable patience, they become something else entirely. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. The Kethari had been observing humanity since before first contact, studying them from afar. What had they seen that others had missed? Enough! Zektar's voice cracked like a whip. We will not be ruled by the fears of the past. The Vorthani Empire has decided. Humanity will be contained. Their expansion will cease. Their military will be reduced. They will accept their proper place as a client species under Vorthani protection. The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates from smaller species looked terrified, caught between the growing conflict. The militaristic Gorthak species began chattering excitedly, sensing opportunity in the brewing storm. The peaceful Zalari huddled together, their large eyes wide with fear. Sarah stood again, and somehow her presence cut through the noise. Ambassador Zektar, humanity rejects your ultimatum. We are not a client species. We will not be contained. We have offered friendship to all who would accept it, but we will not bow to threats." "Then you have chosen your fate," Zektar declared. "The Vorthani Empire has the backing of 12 member species. Our combined fleets number in the thousands. Your human stubbornness will be broken one way or another." Morden rose from his seat, his ancient form trembling not with age but with something deeper. "You have been warned, Zektar of Vorthani. You break the oldest rule in the galaxy. The consequences will be yours to bear." As the council session devolved into angry shouting matches and emergency caucuses, Sarah quietly activated her quantum communicator. Her message was brief, but would change everything. "This is Ambassador Chen to Fleet Command. Code Crimson. Galactic Council has been compromised. Multiple species acting under Vorthani influence are preparing hostile action. Recommend immediate defensive posture. Request update on Project Prometheus status." The response came within minutes. "Project Prometheus is online. All defensive platforms are operational. The Outer Rim fleet is standing by. Terra Command sends this message, let them come." Sarah closed the communicator and looked around the chamber one final time. The various species were already forming alliance blocks, battle lines being drawn with words and gestures. The Vorthani had orchestrated this beautifully, turning the Council into their tool for human subjugation. But Zektar had made one crucial mistake. He had listened to human words about peace and cooperation and assumed it meant weakness. He had seen their reluctance to use force and mistaken it for inability. He had observed their desire for harmony and confused it with submission. As Sarah gathered her things and prepared to leave, she caught Morden's ancient gaze one final time. The Kethari elder nodded slowly, his expression filled with something that might have been pity. The oldest rule in the galaxy was about to be broken, and Zektar would learn why that rule existed in the first place. 3 days after the council session, the first shots were fired in the Kepler 442 system. A human cargo vessel carrying medical supplies to the colony world of New Brisbane was intercepted by a Vorthani battle group. Captain Maria Santos received the demand to submit to inspection with grim resignation. "This is Vorthani warship Decimator to human vessel. Prepare to be boarded for inspection under Galactic Security Resolution 1247. Maria checked her displays. Resolution 1247 didn't exist, but the 3 Vorthani destroyers surrounding her ship were very real. "Decimator, this is the merchant vessel Hope's Light. We are carrying humanitarian supplies under protected convoy status. Any interference violates 17 different galactic treaties." "Your treaties are void," came the harsh reply. "Submit or be destroyed." Maria Santos was a veteran of the border wars, the last major human conflict before they joined the galactic community. She'd seen enough violence to last several lifetimes, but she also understood something that the Vorthani clearly didn't. Sometimes, violence was the only language bullies understood. Hope's Light to New Brisbane Control. "Mayday, Mayday. We are under attack by Vorthani forces. Send immediate assistance and record all transmissions for the record." "Negative, Hope's Light. No assistance available. Comply with Vorthani demands." Maria's blood ran cold. New Brisbane Control was supposed to be run by the colonial government, but that voice had sounded distinctly non-human. The Vorthani had already moved on the colony. "Hope's Light, this is your final warning." Maria reached for her emergency beacon, the one that would send her ship's location and status directly to Human Fleet Command. But before she could activate it, her sensors detected something that made her smile grimly. "Decimator, this is Hope's Light. I want to make sure you understand what you're doing here. You're attacking a civilian vessel carrying medical supplies. You're threatening a human citizen in human space. Are you absolutely certain this is the path you want to take? Your pathetic threats mean nothing. Prepare to die, human." The first missile salvo from the Decimator never reached its target. 3 pinpricks of light appeared on the edge of the sensor screen, and suddenly the space around Maria's ship filled with defensive fire. The human Navy destroyer, Relentless, materialized from stealth mode, its weapons already locked onto the Vorthani ships. "This is Captain James Walker of the Terran Navy. Vorthani vessels, you are in violation of 16 separate galactic treaties and have committed an act of war against the Terran Federation. Stand down immediately or face the consequences." The Vorthani commander's response was predictable. 1 human ship against 3 Vorthani destroyers? "Your mathematics are poor, human." "My mathematics are perfect," Walker replied calmly. "You just can't see all the variables yet." As if summoned by his words, 2 more human ships dropped out of hyperspace. The heavy cruiser Indomitable and the assault carrier Washington took flanking positions, their weapons trained on the Vorthani formation. But Captain Walker wasn't interested in a conventional space battle. Humanity had learned many things during their violent history, and one of the most important lessons was that sometimes you had to send a message that couldn't be misunderstood. Vorthani vessels. Final warning. Withdraw immediately or we will demonstrate why attacking human civilians is considered inadvisable. The decimator opened fire. What happened next would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for decades to come. The human ships didn't simply return fire. They dismantled the Vorthani formation with surgical precision that bordered on artistry. The Relentless launched a spread of kinetic penetrators that punched through the decimator's shields like they weren't there. But instead of targeting the ship's power core or bridge, the projectile systematically destroyed every weapon system, every sensor array, every piece of equipment that could pose a threat. The ship was left floating helplessly in space, completely intact but utterly defenseless. The second Vorthani destroyer tried to run. The Washington launched a single fighter craft that caught the fleeing ship in less than 30 seconds. The pilot, Lieutenant Sarah Kim, used precision plasma bursts to disable the destroyer's engines, leaving it drifting but alive. The third destroyer surrendered without firing another shot. Captain Walker opened a general broadcast on all frequencies. This is Captain Walker to all vessels in the Kepler 442 system. Let the record show that Vorthani forces initiated hostilities against civilian targets. The Terran Federation response was measured and proportional. All Vorthani personnel are to be treated according to galactic conventions regarding prisoners of war. As the human ships began rescue operations for the disabled Vorthani crews, Maria Santos found herself shaking. Not from fear, but from something deeper. She'd just witnessed something that would echo through history. The humans hadn't simply won a space battle. They'd sent a message. They could have vaporized all 3 ships in seconds, but instead they'd chosen to demonstrate their superiority in the most psychologically devastating way possible. The Vorthani crews would return home with stories of human ships that appeared from nowhere, weapons that struck with impossible precision, and tactics that showed both overwhelming capability and terrifying restraint. Meanwhile, in the Vorthani capital system, Admiral Kestar was receiving his first reports from the Kepler incident. As Zektar's military commander and cousin, he'd been confident that early human defeats would demoralize their entire species and make the subsequent invasion simple. 3 destroyers disabled? How many human ships? 3, Admiral. 1 destroyer, 1 cruiser, 1 carrier. And our casualties? 17 wounded, none killed. The humans made extensive efforts to preserve Vorthani lives during the engagement. Admiral Kessitar stared at the report in confusion. They disabled our ships without killing anyone? What kind of tactic is that? His intelligence officer, a nervous young Vorthani named Veltar, cleared his throat. Admiral, our analysts believe it was a demonstration. They wanted us to know they could have killed everyone but chose not to. Ridiculous. No military force shows such restraint without reason. They must be weak, afraid of escalation. But even as he spoke the words, Kestar felt a growing unease. The humans had appeared on the galactic stage with technology that seemed to advance by leaps and bounds. Their ships were fast, their weapons precise, their tactics unpredictable. And now they demonstrated the ability to defeat Vorthani forces without even trying to destroy them. Admiral, Veltar continued hesitantly, there's something else. Our deep space monitors picked up massive energy signatures throughout human space immediately after the Kepler incident. It appears they've activated some kind of defensive network. What kind of network? Unknown, sir. But the energy readings are unlike anything we've seen before. Our scientists estimate it would require the power output of entire star systems to generate signatures of that magnitude. Admiral Kessitar dismissed his aide and stared out at the stars beyond his command ship. The Vorthani Empire had fought dozens of wars over the centuries, conquering species after species through superior numbers and traditional tactics. But nothing in their experience had prepared them for this. The humans fought like nothing they'd ever encountered. They combined overwhelming technological superiority with tactical restraint that seemed almost insulting. They could destroy their enemies but chose instead to humiliate them. They could have ended the Kepler engagement in seconds, but had drawn it out to make a point. As reports continued to stream in from across the galaxy, Admiral Kessatar began to understand what his cousin had truly unleashed. The humans weren't just another species to be conquered. They were something entirely different, something that had been waiting patiently for someone to make the first move. And now that move had been made. Within a week of the Kepler incident, the galaxy began to see why the ancient Kethari had warned against enraging humans. What started as isolated skirmishes quickly escalated into something unprecedented in galactic history. The Gorthak hegemony, longtime allies of the Vorthani, launched a surprise attack on the human research station orbiting Proxima Centauri. They expected to find a lightly defended scientific outpost. Instead, they found themselves facing something that defied every military doctrine in their extensive database. Commander Threxnall led the assault with 6 heavy battleships, confident that overwhelming firepower would make short work of the human facility. The research station appeared defenseless, with no visible weapons or shield generators. It was exactly the kind of easy victory that would demonstrate Gorthak's superiority. "Target the station's power core," Threxnall commanded. "Make it quick and clean." His weapons officer hesitated. "Commander, our sensors are detecting some unusual readings from the station's infrastructure." "Elaborate." "The station appears to be built around a quantum containment field of unprecedented size. The energy readings suggest they're conducting experiments with exotic matter." Threxnall's mandibles clicked impatiently. "Science experiments. Irrelevant. Fire when ready." The first salvo of plasma torpedoes streaked toward the research station. They never arrived. Instead, they simply vanished, as if space itself had swallowed them whole. "What happened to our weapons?" Threxnall demanded. Before anyone could answer, space around the Gorthak fleet began to ripple like water. The stars themselves seemed to bend and twist, and then suddenly the 6 battleships found themselves floating in the middle of a completely different star system. "Navigation, report our position immediately." The navigation officer's voice was barely a whisper. "Commander, according to our instruments, we are now in the Sol system. We are approximately 12 light-years from our previous position." "That's impossible. No known technology can move objects of this size instantly across such distances." As if in response to his words, a human voice filled the bridge, speaking perfect Gorthak, despite the fact that their species had never shared linguistic data. "Commander Threxnall, this is Dr. Sarah Chen, director of the Proxima Research Station. You just attempted to attack a facility conducting research into spatial manipulation technology. As a demonstration of our current capabilities, we have relocated your fleet to Sol system. Your ships are unharmed, but I wanted you to understand exactly what you're dealing with." Threxnall stared at his screens in horror. The human research station now appeared on his sensors, but it was no longer the simple structure he'd attacked. Instead, it was a massive complex that seemed to extend partially into dimensions his instruments couldn't properly measure. "This is impossible," he repeated. "No, Commander, this is science. The same science your people just tried to destroy. The same science that could relocate your entire home system to the edge of a black hole if we were feeling less generous than we are today." The implications hit Threxnall like a physical blow. If the humans could move entire fleets across the galaxy instantly, then traditional military tactics were meaningless. Distance, strategic positioning, even the concept of territorial defense, all of it became irrelevant in the face of such technology. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice hollow. "I want you to return to your government and deliver a message. Humanity has been developing defensive technologies for decades. We have not shared these technologies because we hoped they would never be necessary. However, recent events have forced us to reconsider our position. Tell your leaders that this demonstration represents perhaps 1% of our current capabilities." 1%? "Commander, we can fold space, manipulate time, and alter matter at the quantum level. We have weapons that could sterilize entire star systems without leaving a trace, and defensive systems that make us effectively untouchable. We have chosen not to use these capabilities because we believe in peaceful coexistence. But that doesn't mean we're helpless." Threxnall's fleet was returned to Gorthak space exactly as suddenly as they'd been taken. The only evidence of their journey was the complete tactical recordings that every ship had made, proof that the impossible had actually happened. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, similar demonstrations were occurring wherever human interests were threatened. A Zalari diplomatic vessel carrying peace proposals was attacked by Vorthani raiders and simply vanished from normal space, reappearing safely in human territory with all crew unharmed. A convoy of human medical supplies bound for refugee camps was intercepted by pirates, only to have the pirates' ships mysteriously lose all power and find themselves surrounded by human vessels that had appeared from nowhere. In the Vorthani capital, Ambassador Zektar was growing increasingly desperate as reports poured in from across the galaxy. None of his allies were reporting victories. Instead, they were describing impossible encounters with human forces that seemed to operate outside the known laws of physics. How can one species possess such advanced technology? He demanded of his science advisor, an ancient Vorthani scholar named Morketh. I have studied this question extensively, Morketh replied carefully. The humans have only been spacefaring for 2 centuries, yet their technological development follows no known pattern. Most species require millennia to develop each new tier of technology. The humans appear to advance multiple tiers simultaneously. That's impossible. No species develops that quickly. Indeed. Unless. Morketh paused, his expression troubled. Unless what? Unless they are not developing these technologies from scratch. Our Xenoarchaeological Division has noted certain anomalies in human space. Structures that appear far older than human civilization, yet clearly designed for humanoid operation. Zektar felt a chill that had nothing to do with the climate controls. What are you suggesting? I am suggesting that humanity may not be the first intelligent species to evolve on Earth. The humans may be inheritors of technology left by their predecessors, technology they are only now learning to fully utilize. The implications were staggering. If humans had access to technology from an unknown precursor civilization, then the current conflict wasn't between the Vorthani Empire and a young spacefaring species. It was between the Vorthani and the inheritors of potentially millions of years of technological development. Sir, an aide interrupted urgently. We're receiving a priority transmission from the Galactic Council. It's from Elder Morden of the Kethari. The holographic projector activated, showing the ancient alien's weathered features. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight that seemed to press down on everyone in the room. Zektar of Vorthani, you have been warned. You have seen demonstrations. You have witnessed capabilities that your empire cannot match or counter. The humans have shown remarkable restraint, but that restraint is not infinite. Stand down your forces immediately, or face consequences that will echo through galactic history. I will not be threatened by ancient superstitions. Zektar snarled. This is not a threat, Morden replied calmly. This is a prophecy. The humans are awakening to their true nature. Each attack upon them brings them closer to remembering what they once were. Continue this path and you will face not merely humanity as you know them, but humanity as they were meant to be. The transmission ended, leaving Zektar staring at empty air. Around him, his advisors shifted nervously. The ancient Kethari were known throughout the galaxy for their prophetic abilities, their understanding of cosmic patterns that spanned eons. But Zektar had come too far to back down now. His empire's credibility was at stake. If he showed weakness in the face of human resistance, a dozen other species would challenge Vorthani authority. The empire would crumble within a generation. Admiral Kessitar, he commanded, begin the final phase. Mobilize the entire fleet. If the humans want a war, we'll give them one they'll never forget. But as he gave the order, Zektar couldn't shake the feeling that he was making a terrible mistake. The humans had shown capabilities that bordered on godlike, yet they continued to show restraint that seemed almost divine. What would happen when that restraint finally failed? He was about to find out. The final phase of the Vorthani offensive began with the largest military mobilization in galactic history. Admiral Kestar assembled over 3,000 warships from across the Empire and its allied species. The armada was so vast that it created gravitational distortions visible from neighboring star systems. Today we end the human threat once and for all, Kessitar announced to his fleet commanders. Our target is Earth itself. We will bypass their outer defenses and strike at the heart of their power. Once their homeworld falls, the rest of their colonies will surrender. It was a sound strategy based on thousands of years of galactic warfare. Cut off the head and the body dies. No species had ever successfully defended their homeworld against such overwhelming force. But as the massive fleet entered hyperspace, heading for the Sol system, they were unaware that their every movement was being monitored by systems beyond their comprehension. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, in a facility that existed partially outside normal space-time, General Marcus Webb studied the approaching threat with grim determination. As head of Terra Defense Command, he'd spent the last 50 years preparing for this exact scenario. "They're coming with everything they have," reported Dr. Lisa Park, his chief science officer. 3,000 ships, including 12 Dreadnought-class vessels and 47 planet killers. Expected arrival time? 18 hours at their current speed. Webb nodded slowly. "Send the activation codes to all Prometheus stations. It's time to show them what humanity is really capable of." Across human space, ancient installations that had slumbered for millennia began to wake up. On Luna, beneath the Mare Tranquillitatis, massive power generators that predated human civilization hummed to life. On Mars, within the mysterious structures of Cydonia, weapon systems that had waited eons for activation began their startup sequences. But the most significant activation occurred on Earth itself. In locations scattered across the planet, buried beneath ice caps and ocean floors, hidden within mountain ranges and desert wastes, the true legacy of humanity's predecessors finally revealed itself. The Vorthani fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, expecting to find the humans' outer defenses. Instead, they found something that defied every law of physics they understood. "Admiral," his sensor officer reported, voice shaking with disbelief. "The Sol system is not where it should be." "Explain." "Our navigation computers say we're in the correct location, but the system appears to have been moved approximately 12 degrees along the galactic plane. The entire star system has shifted position." Admiral Kessistar stared at the impossible readings. "That's absurd. You cannot move a star system." "Yes, sir, that's what I thought as well. But long-range sensors confirm the system's new position. Somehow the humans have relocated their entire solar system." Before Kessitar could process this information fully, his communications officer reported an incoming transmission. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force." The voice was calm, professional, but carried an undertone that made experienced warriors nervous. "You are entering sovereign human space with hostile intent. This is your final opportunity to withdraw." Kessitar activated his own transmitter. "Human Admiral, you face the combined might of 16 species and 3,000 warships. Your technological tricks will not save you. Surrender now and your deaths will be swift." "I think you misunderstand the situation," Admiral Chen replied. "You are not facing the Terran Defense Force. You are facing the awakened inheritors of the Architect legacy. The beings you call humans are far more than you realize." As if to emphasize her words, space around the Vorthani fleet began to change. What had appeared to be empty void suddenly filled with structures of impossible size and complexity. Defensive platforms that dwarfed the largest dreadnoughts materialized from what seemed like nowhere. Weapon arrays the size of moons tracked their movements with predatory precision. "Where did these installations come from?" Kestar demanded. "They have always been here," came the reply, hidden in folded space, waiting for the day when humanity would need them. The architects built these defenses millions of years ago, designed specifically for the species that would inherit their legacy. The truth hit Kessitar like a physical blow. The humans weren't just another spacefaring species. They were the inheritors of technology so advanced that it appeared magical. The peaceful, cooperative beings who had joined the galactic community were descendants of a civilization that had transcended physical limitations eons ago. "This is impossible," he whispered. "Admiral," his tactical officer interrupted urgently. "The human installations are powering up weapons systems. Energy readings are off the scale. All ships, attack formation. Target the largest platforms." The Vorthani fleet opened fire with everything they had. Plasma cannons, kinetic impactors, antimatter torpedoes, and exotic particle beams lanced out toward the human defenses. It was enough firepower to sterilize a dozen worlds. None of it reached its target. The human defensive systems didn't simply block the incoming fire. They absorbed it, converted it, and fed it back into their own power systems. The massive energy expenditure of the Vorthani attack only made the human defenses stronger. Weapons effect 0%, reported the tactical officer. Sir, our attacks are actually strengthening their shields. Admiral Chen's voice returned, but now it carried a different quality. The patient diplomacy was gone, replaced by something that made hardened warriors consider running. You have fired upon Earth. You have threatened the birth world of humanity. This action has awakened protocols that have slept since the fall of the architects. You wanted to see our true capabilities. Very well. Space itself seemed to ripple, and suddenly the Vorthani fleet found themselves surrounded not by defensive platforms, but by impossible geometric structures that hurt to look at directly. Weapons that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously began to charge with energies that registered as tiny stars on their sensors. All ships, emergency jump, Kessater ordered. Get us out of here. Sir, hyperspace engines won't respond. Something is jamming our jump capability. Then we fight, Kessater snarled, but even as he said it, he knew it was hopeless. They were facing technology that was millions of years beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. The human weapons fired. But instead of the devastating attack Kessater expected, something else happened. His ships began to change. Not destroyed, not damaged, but fundamentally altered at the molecular level. The hulls remained intact, but every weapon system, every shield generator, every piece of military hardware simply ceased to exist. The ships were transformed into harmless passenger vessels, completely incapable of warfare, but perfectly suited for safe transport. 3,000 warships became 3,000 flying rescue pods in less than a minute. This is Admiral Chen to all Vorthani personnel. Your ships have been converted to ensure the safety of your crews. You will be escorted to the edge of human space and released unharmed. Your weapons and military systems have been permanently neutralized, but your life support and navigation systems remain fully functional. Kessater slumped in his command chair, staring at displays that showed his mighty fleet reduced to helplessness without a single casualty. What are you? He whispered. We are what we have always been, came the reply. We are human. We are the children of Earth, the inheritors of the architects and the guardians of peace in this galaxy. We tried to show you this through cooperation and diplomacy. You have forced us to show you through demonstration of power. As the defeated Vorthani fleet was gently escorted away from Earth, Admiral Chen opened a channel to the Galactic Council. This is Admiral Chen to all council members. The unprovoked attack on Earth has forced humanity to reveal capabilities we had hoped to keep hidden. We are transmitting complete records of this engagement to all species. Let there be no misunderstanding about what has occurred here today. The recordings would be studied for generations. They showed a species that had access to technology so advanced it bordered on magic, yet which used that technology with restraint that bordered on divine mercy. The humans could have destroyed their attackers instantly, but instead had chosen to neutralize them while preserving every life. It was a demonstration of power, coupled with compassion that would reshape galactic politics forever. And it was exactly what the ancient Kethari had been trying to warn them about. Never enrage the humans, because when you finally succeeded in making them angry, you discovered that they were not the young, primitive species they appeared to be. They were something far older, far more powerful, and far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. In the aftermath of the Sol system engagement, the galaxy fell into stunned silence. The recordings from the Vorthani fleet had been distributed to every member species of the Galactic Council, and the implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't just defeated the largest invasion force in galactic history. They had done so without killing a single attacker. Ambassador Zektar stood in his private chambers, staring out at the stars that suddenly seemed far less friendly than they had a week ago. The reports from Admiral Kessater were impossible to believe, yet the sensor data was undeniable. The humans possessed technology that operated beyond the known laws of physics. Sir, his aide Veltar interrupted hesitantly. The Council has called an emergency session. All member species are demanding answers. Zektar turned from the window, his four eyes reflecting a weariness that came from watching his life's work crumble in a matter of days. Answers? What answers can I give them? That I led the galaxy into a war against gods? Sir, they're not gods. They're just what? Zektar's voice cracked with something between rage and despair. They moved an entire star system. They converted 3,000 warships into passenger vessels without harming a single crew member. They have weapons that exist in multiple dimensions and defenses that grow stronger when attacked. What would you call beings with such capabilities? Before Veltar could answer, an urgent chime indicated an incoming priority transmission. The holographic projector activated, showing the ancient features of Elder Morden, Zektar of Vorthani. The Kethari Elder began without preamble. The time has come for truth. You have awakened something that was meant to sleep until the galaxy was ready for it. The humans you see before you are not the humans that once walked among us. What do you mean? The humans who joined our galactic community 50 years ago were deliberately limiting themselves. They possessed the knowledge of their inheritance but chose to appear primitive, hoping to integrate peacefully into our civilization. They wanted to be part of our community, not its rulers. Zektar felt something cold settle in his chest. You're saying they've been hiding their true nature? Not hiding, restraining, there is a difference. The humans have access to technology left by their predecessors, beings they call the architects, but they also possess something far more dangerous than any weapon. They have the psychological profile that made the architects the most feared species in galactic history. The holographic image shifted, showing star charts that were millions of years old. Systems that had once teemed with life now showed as empty voids. Their stars still burning, but their worlds reduced to cosmic dust. The architects were not conquerors in the traditional sense, Morden continued. They were gardeners. When they found a species that threatened the balance of life in the galaxy, they removed that species entirely. Not just their military, not just their government. Their entire civilization, their homeworld, even the memory of their existence. They had the power to edit reality itself. And the humans are their inheritors. The humans are what the architects became. Evolution guided by wisdom, power tempered by conscience. They chose to become mortal, to limit themselves, to start over as a young species that could grow and learn alongside others. But the power remains, sleeping in their genes, waiting to be awakened when the galaxy faces a true threat. Zektar's legs gave out, and he collapsed into his chair. Then we've doomed ourselves. If they have that kind of power, you misunderstand the nature of the threat, Morden interrupted. The humans do not wish to rule or destroy. They wish to protect and nurture. But they define protection in ways that other species find unsettling. The star charts changed again, showing regions of space that were impossibly peaceful. Systems where war had not occurred for millions of years, where every species lived in harmony with their neighbors. These are the systems under architect protection, Morden explained. The species there evolved beyond conflict because the architects removed every element that could lead to large-scale violence. Aggressive leaders simply vanished. Weapons of mass destruction failed to function. Entire military mindsets were gently edited out of the collective consciousness. They changed the very nature of these species. They guided their evolution toward peace. Some called it benevolent tyranny. Others called it salvation. The result was the same, perfect harmony at the cost of free will. Zektar stared at the charts in horror. And now the humans have this same power? The humans have far more restraint than their predecessors. They genuinely want other species to choose peace freely. But if pushed far enough, if they believe the galaxy is truly threatened, they will do what the architects did. They will impose peace. The transmission paused as Morden's ancient features showed something that might have been sadness. Your aggression has awakened their protective instincts. Even now they are debating among themselves how to respond to the threat you represent. Some argue for patience, for giving your people time to learn from their mistakes. Others believe that the Vorthani Empire has proven itself incapable of coexistence. What do you recommend? Immediate, complete, and unconditional surrender. Not just military surrender. Surrender of the mindset that led to this conflict. The humans must be convinced that your people can change, that they can become something other than a threat to galactic peace. Zektar's pride warred with his survival instincts. The Vorthani Empire had ruled much of the galaxy for centuries. To surrender completely would mean the end of everything his people had built. And if we refuse, then you will discover what happened to the 17 species that the architects deemed irredeemable. Your worlds will remain, your sun will continue to shine, but the Vorthani people will simply fade away, not killed, not conquered, but gently guided toward extinction through 1,000 small changes that seem natural and inevitable. The implications were more terrifying than any weapon. To be destroyed in battle was one thing. but to be slowly, kindly edited out of existence was something else entirely. There is one other option, Morden continued. The humans are not the architects. They still believe in redemption, in the possibility of change. If your people can prove that they have genuinely abandoned their aggressive nature, the humans might accept them as junior partners in their mission to protect the galaxy. Junior partners? The Vorthani Empire would become a peacekeeping force under human guidance. Your military would be converted to search and rescue operations, disaster relief, and protection of developing species. Your people would retain their pride and purpose, but channeled toward construction rather than destruction. Zektar considered this for long minutes. It wasn't the total domination he'd dreamed of, but it was survival with dignity, and perhaps in time, his people could prove themselves worthy of greater trust. How do I convince the humans that we've changed? Actions, not words. Begin immediately dismantling your offensive capabilities. Convert your warships to humanitarian vessels. Open your borders to refugee species. Most importantly, surrender yourself and your military leaders to human justice. Show them that you accept responsibility for the conflict you initiated. The transmission ended, leaving Zektar alone with the most important decision in Vorthani history. He could continue fighting a war he couldn't win, leading his people to extinction, or he could swallow his pride and seek redemption from the EU, beings his actions had awakened. Activated his communicator and sent a message that would echo through galactic history. This is Ambassador Zektar to all Vorthani forces. Cease all military operations immediately. Prepare for full surrender to human authority. The war is over. We have learned why the ancients warned us never to enrage the humans. Now we must learn whether their mercy is as great as their power. Across the galaxy, other species were making similar calculations. The humans had shown capabilities that rendered traditional military power meaningless, but they had also shown restraint that offered hope for those willing to change. The old galactic order was ending. What would replace it would depend on humanity's answer to a single question. Could a species with godlike power resist the temptation to use it? The surrender ceremony took place in neutral space, aboard the ancient Cathari vessel, Wisdom of Ages. Representatives from every major species in the galaxy gathered to witness what many believed would be the end of the Vorthani Empire and the beginning of human dominance over galactic civilization. Ambassador Sarah Chen arrived aboard a vessel that seemed to bend light around itself, a ship that existed partially in normal space and partially in dimensions that most species couldn't even perceive. She wore simple diplomatic robes, but everyone present could feel the immense power that flowed through the technology surrounding her. Ambassador Zektar knelt in the center of the chamber, his ceremonial armor replaced by simple prisoner's garb. Around him, the surviving leadership of the Vorthani military awaited their fate. Admiral Kester stood with his head bowed, still struggling to comprehend how his mighty fleet had been rendered, helpless without a single shot being fired in return. The Vorthani Empire formally surrenders all military assets and territorial claims to the Terran Federation, Zektar began, his voice steady despite the magnitude of his words. We accept full responsibility for initiating unprovoked warfare against human civilians and military forces. We place ourselves at the mercy of human justice. Sarah Chen studied the assembled Vorthani leadership for long moments before responding. When she spoke, her words carried the weight of decisions that would shape galactic civilization for millennia to come. The Terran Federation accepts your surrender, she said simply, but we reject your offer to place yourselves at our mercy. Humanity has no desire to rule over other species or to impose our will through force. Confused murmurs rippled through the chamber. This was not how galactic politics traditionally worked. The victor dictated terms to the defeated, yet the humans seemed to be refusing the very power that their victory had earned them. Instead, Sarah continued, we propose a different path forward. The Galactic Council will be reformed as a true democratic body, with representation based on population and technological contribution rather than military might. All species will have equal voice in galactic affairs. Elder Morden leaned forward from his position as ceremonial witness. And what of the Vorthani? What is to be their fate? The Vorthani people will retain their autonomy and their worlds, Sarah replied. However, their military will be restructured as a peacekeeping and humanitarian force, operating under joint command with other species. Ambassador Zektar and his senior officers will serve a period of supervised probation, during which they will work to undo the damage their policies have caused across the galaxy. Zektar looked up in surprise. You're not going to execute us? Or exile us to some prison world? What would that accomplish? Sarah asked. Your death would create martyrs. Your imprisonment would waste the knowledge and experience you've gained. Instead, you will spend the next 20 years working to repair the harm you've caused. You will personally oversee the resettlement of refugee populations, the rebuilding of worlds damaged by your expansion, and the integration of former Vorthani client species into the new galactic order. Admiral Kestar stepped forward. And if we refuse? If we resist your authority? Sarah's expression didn't change, but something in the air around her seemed to shift. For just a moment, every being in the chamber felt the vast, incomprehensible power that lay behind her words. Then you will discover why the ancients warned against enraging humanity, she said quietly. We prefer cooperation and redemption, but we will not allow the galaxy to be threatened by those who refuse to learn from their mistakes. The demonstration was subtle but effective. The environmental controls on the ship briefly altered the local gravity field, just enough to make everyone feel momentarily lighter. It was a gentle reminder that the humans could manipulate fundamental forces in ways that made traditional concepts of military power irrelevant. However, Sarah continued, and the sensation passed. We believe that everyone deserves a chance to change, to grow, to become something better than they were. The question is whether you're willing to take that chance. Zektar considered this for long moments. The offer was more generous than he'd dared hope for, but it came with conditions that would fundamentally change everything the Vorthani Empire represented. What guarantees do we have that humanity won't simply dispose of us once we've served your purposes? Sarah smiled, and for the first time since the crisis began, it was a genuinely warm expression. You have the same guarantee that every species in this galaxy has, our nature. We are not the architects, despite sharing their legacy. We believe in growth, in redemption, in the possibility that any being can choose to become better than they were. Elder Morden spoke into the silence that followed. The Kethari have observed humanity for centuries, since before your species achieved spaceflight. We have seen how you treat your enemies when you defeat them. You integrate them. You heal them. You give them opportunities to contribute to something greater than themselves. This is why we warned against enraging you, not because you would destroy those who opposed you, but because you would force them to confront the better versions of themselves. The truth of those words settled over the chamber like a weight. The humans weren't offering conquest or domination. They were offering transformation, the chance for every species to evolve beyond the cycle of conflict that had defined galactic politics for millennia. I accept, Zektar said finally. The Vorthani people accept your terms. We will work to earn our place in this new galaxy you're creating. Admiral Kessitar nodded his agreement, followed by the other Vorthani officers. One by one, they formally pledged themselves to the task of rebuilding what they had tried to destroy. But Sarah Chen wasn't finished. She activated a holographic projector that showed the entire galaxy, with markers indicating every inhabited system. The reformation of galactic civilization begins now, she announced. Over the next decade, humanity will be sharing advanced technologies with all species that demonstrate peaceful intentions. Medical advances that can extend lifespans indefinitely. Energy systems that can power entire civilizations without environmental damage. Transportation technology that will make travel between stars as simple as walking between rooms. The implications were staggering. Species that had been locked in resource conflicts for centuries would suddenly have access to unlimited clean energy. Medical technologies that could eliminate aging and disease would fundamentally change how civilizations developed. Instant interstellar travel would make the galaxy feel as small as a single world. But with these gifts comes responsibility, Sarah continued. Any species that uses our technology to threaten others will find that technology simply ceases to function. We will not enable violence even inadvertently. A delegate from the peaceful Zalari species raised a webbed hand. What if a species chooses not to accept your technologies? What if they prefer to develop at their own pace? Then they will be left alone to do exactly that, Sarah replied. Participation in the new galactic order is entirely voluntary, but those who choose isolation cannot use that isolation to prepare for aggression against others. It was a framework that promised to end the cycle of galactic conflict forever. Advanced technology shared freely but with safeguards that prevented its misuse. voluntary participation that allowed species to develop according to their own nature. And underlying it all, the quiet presence of humanity, not as rulers but as guardians, ensuring that the galaxy would never again face the threat of species-wide extinction. Elder Morden rose slowly from his seat, his ancient frame trembling with something that might have been relief. "The long watch is ending," he said quietly. "For millennia, the Kethari have waited for this day, when the inheritors of the architects would finally reveal themselves and bring peace to the galaxy. The humans have surpassed even our most optimistic predictions. They offer not just peace, but the chance for every species to become the best version of themselves." As the ceremony concluded and representatives began to disperse, Zektar found himself standing beside Sarah Chen as they watched the galaxy's leaders begin the delicate work of building a new form of civilization. "Why?" he asked simply. "You have the power to rule absolutely. Why choose this path instead?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment before answering. "Because absolute power over others is not strength, it's weakness. True strength comes from helping others find their own power, their own purpose, their own path to greatness. The architects forgot that lesson, and it led to their isolation and eventual transcendence. We won't make the same mistake. And if this new order fails, if species choose conflict despite everything you're offering," Sarah's smile was sad but determined, "then we'll try again, and again, for as long as it takes, because the alternative, a galaxy locked in eternal conflict, is unacceptable. We have the power to impose peace, but we prefer to inspire it." As the great ships began to depart, carrying the news of the new galactic order to every inhabited world, the ancient warning echoed one final time through the chambers of power across the galaxy. Never enrage the humans, not because they would destroy you, but because they would force you to become everything you could be. 20 years after the surrender ceremony, the galaxy had transformed beyond recognition. Where once there had been trade wars, territorial disputes, and resource conflicts, now there was unprecedented cooperation and prosperity. The technology shared by humanity had indeed changed everything, but not in the way most species had expected. Former Ambassador Zektar, now Director of Galactic Rehabilitation Services, stood on the observation deck of the orbital station above New Vorthak, watching refugee ships arrive from across the galaxy. These weren't refugees from war or disaster, but beings seeking transformation, species that had heard about the changes occurring in reformed civilizations and wanted to experience them firsthand. "The irony is not lost on me," he said to his companion, former Admiral Kestar, who now served as head of the Intersystem Rescue Corps. "We spent centuries trying to rule the galaxy through fear and force. The humans accomplished more in 20 years through inspiration and example." Kestar nodded, his attention focused on the arrival schedules. "Today we're receiving representatives from the Outer Rim Confederacy. They've decided to join the Galactic Cooperative. That makes us what, 97% participation? 98.4%, Zektar corrected. The only holdouts are the Isolation Alliance and the Free Systems Collective. And even they're showing signs of interest. The transformation hadn't been easy. The first years after the Reformation had been chaotic, as entire civilizations struggled to adapt to technologies that made their traditional economic and political systems obsolete. Energy scarcity became meaningless when fusion reactors the size of briefcases could power entire cities. Resource conflicts ended when matter replicators could create any material from basic elements. Territorial disputes lost relevance when instant transportation made distance irrelevant. But the real change had come from something subtler than technology. The humans had shared more than just machines and scientific knowledge. They had shared a philosophy, a way of thinking about existence that emphasized cooperation over competition, growth over conquest, and collective achievement over individual dominance. "Sir," interrupted Lieutenant Veltar, who had followed his former commander into the rehabilitation service, "we're receiving a priority message from Earth. It's from Admiral Chen." The holographic projector activated, showing Sarah Chen standing in what appeared to be a garden that existed in several dimensions simultaneously. She had aged little in the 20 years since the Reformation, another gift of architect technology. But her expression carried the weight of decisions that had reshaped galactic civilization. "Director Zektar, Admiral Kesseter," she began with a warm smile, "I wanted to personally congratulate you on the success of the refugee integration program. The transformation of former enemy species into willing partners continues to exceed our most optimistic projections. Zektar felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the station's environmental controls. Recognition from the humans carried weight throughout the galaxy now, not because they demanded respect, but because they had earned it through consistent demonstration of wisdom and restraint. However, Sarah continued, I'm contacting you about a more serious matter. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected something unprecedented. We appear to have visitors from outside our galaxy. The warmth in Zektar's chest turned cold. Extragalactic contact? What kind of beings are we dealing with? Unknown at this time. The ships are using technology we don't recognize, and they're approaching through what appears to be an artificially created wormhole. Most concerning, they've ignored all our attempts at communication. Our preliminary analysis suggests they may be scouts for a larger force. Kestar leaned forward. Are you requesting military support? The Rehabilitation Corps has access to significant resources. Sarah's expression became thoughtful. Actually, we're requesting something else entirely. We want you to lead the first contact mission. Us? Zektar couldn't hide his surprise. But we're former enemies. Surely human diplomats would be more appropriate. That's exactly why we want you to handle this, Sarah explained. These beings may be investigating our galaxy to determine if it poses a threat. If they encounter humans immediately, with our current technological capabilities, they might assume we're a conquering species and respond with preemptive force. But if they meet species that were once enemies of humanity and see how you've been treated, how you've grown and changed. The strategy was brilliant in its simplicity. The transformed Vorthani represented living proof that humanity's power was used for creation rather than destruction. If the extragalactic visitors were indeed scouts evaluating threats, they would find evidence of a galaxy at peace, guided by beings who use their strength to elevate others rather than dominate them. We accept the mission, Zektar said without hesitation. What resources will we have available? Full access to architect technology, including dimensional manipulation capabilities and quantum communication arrays. You'll be commanding the newest class of exploration vessels, equipped with both defensive and diplomatic systems. Most importantly, you'll have complete authority to negotiate on behalf of the Galactic Cooperative. Kestar raised a question that had been troubling him. What if these visitors are hostile? What if they can't be reasoned with? Sarah's expression became serious. Then they will discover what the Vorthani Empire discovered 20 years ago. But we hope it won't come to that. We believe that any species advanced enough for intergalactic travel must have evolved beyond simple conquest as a survival strategy. The transmission ended, leaving the two former enemies alone with the magnitude of their new responsibility. They were being entrusted with the first contact between their galaxy and whatever lay beyond it. The beings who had once threatened galactic peace were now being asked to serve as ambassadors for that same peace. Are we ready for this? Kestar asked quietly. Zektar looked out at the stars beyond the station, thinking of all the changes that had occurred since that fateful day when he had chosen to challenge humanity. His people had gone from would-be conquerors to protectors, from enemies of peace to its guardians. The transformation had been painful but ultimately liberating. 20 years ago, I thought strength meant the ability to impose your will on others, he said finally. I thought leadership meant making others fear you. The humans taught us that true strength comes from inspiring others to become better than they were. And real leadership means helping others find their own path to greatness. He turned to face his old friend and colleague. If these visitors are peaceful, we'll welcome them to our galaxy and show them what we've built together. If they're hostile, we'll demonstrate why the old rule exists, why you should never enrage the humans. Not because they'll destroy you, but because they'll transform you into something you never imagined you could become. As the two former enemies began preparing for humanity's greatest diplomatic challenge, word spread throughout the galaxy. Species that had once feared each other now worked together to prepare for contact with the unknown. The Galactic Cooperative marshaled resources not for war, but for the greatest welcome in galactic history. And somewhere in the space between galaxies, ancient ships moved through artificial wormholes, their occupants unaware that they were about to encounter something unprecedented in the history of cosmic civilization. A galaxy that had chosen peace not through conquest or submission, but through the conscious decision to help every being reach their highest potential. The oldest rule in the galaxy was about to be tested on an intergalactic scale. The visitors would soon learn why wise species throughout the local group whispered the same warning across the cosmic void. Never enrage the humans, because they might just make you better than you ever dreamed possible. And in the depths of space, as the first extragalactic ships prepared to enter a galaxy transformed by human wisdom, the legacy of the architects lived on in their inheritors, not as conquerors or rulers, but as gardeners of consciousness, nurturing growth and possibility wherever they found it. The galaxy waited with quiet confidence, knowing that whatever came next, they would face it together, as partners in the greatest experiment in cosmic history, a civilization built on the radical idea that everyone deserved the chance to become the best version of themselves.